Want to call to order the August 4th, 2014 meeting of the East Ascension Gravity Drainage District. Would everyone please stand for the invocation and please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. Once more, Lord, we ask that you take care of the people of Ascension Parish and all the people on the Gulf Coast as we come into the heat of the hurricane season. Lord, once more we ask that everyone that has something, look to those that do not have. Let's look forward and look across and look behind us. Let's look to the elderly. Let's make sure that they're taken care of in these times of needs. Lord, we ask special intentions for the Meir family for the loss of Mr. Donnie Meir. We also ask for special intentions for the Bourgeois family for the loss of Mr. Milton Bourgeois. We ask this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Secretary, roll call. Please note that Councilman Turner is absent. All other members present. We're going to move on to number 3. Quick note, public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on an agenda item, please sign in with the Secretary and you'll be given time to speak when that item comes up. The Chair would entertain a motion to accept the minutes of the July meeting.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion by Mr. Satterley.
Second.
Second by Mr. Johnson. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion carries. Right now, I'm going to defer my chairman's report to Mr. Rue. We have some major project work to talk about, and so I'd like to move on to the drainage report, unless somebody has a question. We'll move on to agenda item number 6. Mr. Rue.
Okay, we handed out an updated schedule. I'm not going to take it in depth and go through all of them. We'll take a look at it. I will answer some specific questions if you have any at this time, or if not, we can get together later this week.
Bill, the levy on Henderson Bayou, I see we're 98% complete. What's left?
Well, they're putting revetment or armoring the levee right now. That's the last major part of the contract that remains. Probably, if we stay dry, the dry weather, everything depends on dry weather. If it stays dry, I think the next drainage board meeting, we probably issue a substantial completion. One of the major things we have to do, and we have to wait till we get a significant rainfall within the basin, is to test the pumps under a load. Right now, in the normal conditions, we don't have enough depth of the water to be able to open up this. It's different circumstance in the Marvin Bro pump station, which just about any time the pumps, the impellers are low enough where you can pump. The condition at Henderson Bayou is that you have to wait for a rainfall, headwater coming to it, shut the gates off, let it build up, and then pump to test the pump. So that's the major things we have to do during our operational phase, and that's going to come over the next couple of months.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions for Mr. Rue?
And again, if you don't have anything tonight, just look at the things that you might be interested in, some concerns, and give me a call back, and I'll be glad to meet with you and specifically go through some items of projects in your district.
Well, Bill, you had a nice report. I expected about at least 30 minutes worth of conversation.
Well, we're running behind tonight, so I figured, again, I can talk individually with each council member.
I just want a quick update on the Law Ridge levee extension. We're in permit stage.
The permit stage is a dual permit between DNR, coastal zone permit, and the Corps of Engineers. There's a meeting scheduled, I think, within another week or so with DNR, which the Corps are going to be present, which at that time we'll get a better understanding of where we're at with the permit and maybe some timeline on when it's going to be actually going to the Corps for their input. And I'll be able to update the schedule with that kind of timeline after we meet with them.
And just quickly on the Frog Bayou, project is that, in the eyes of the Corps of Engineers, they look at the Frog Bayou and the Alligator Bayou, which Iberville has a project in there on Alligator Bayou. We have one on Frog Bayou. That they, in their eyes, they look at that as a single area, and each project will have to complement each other, and to get, looking at the operating plan for it is going to be a key factor for that basin.
We have had a meeting with the Arcadis group, which is the engineering group that Iberville Parish hired to assist them, and also Manchac Group, both engineers with Iberville. And we met with our wetland survey consultants, and the Corps of Engineers, consulted with them about the whole project. The Corps is recommending that we do a joint permit, for that project, Iberville Parish and Ascension together for the permit, also for the operational plan, and all the data needs to be one set of data going to the Corps. But it's nothing to say that after we get the permit, the construction of the project can be separated. It don't have to be a joint project.
Right.
But the permit needs to be a joint permit, and that's why we're in discussions with the engineers representing Iberville Parish and with our wetland consultants, and putting that plan together.
And to the best of my knowledge, I think Iberville's plan had changed somewhat. They'd modified their plan, that not necessarily having the permanent pumps in at Alligator Bayou.
They just enlarging the locks, one more set of box covers, double the size that they have now, basically double. And some kind of boat landing, but it's going to be private, nothing to the public at this time. So it's a very, very basic plan that they're putting together.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Ms. Kazza.
Bill, as a follow-up to that, I hope I just need to know if I understood correctly. We are mandated to do this permit, both Iberville and Ascension?
Well, it's a suggestion from the Corps of Engineers, basically because they are not independent structures. The Spanish Lake and Bluff Swamp are dependent on each other, because the Bluff Swamp levee is not actually a levee, it's a berm, and it will overtop. It's designed to overtop. Mm-hmm. And there's some suggestions actually to remove part of it. But the fact of the matter is, they consider it one basin, and whatever work goes on over there, the permit needs to be a joint permit, especially when you're looking at the data. So you don't want to have two different engineers doing the data, two different sets of data going to them on the effects of whatever the work's going on. And the other thing is the operational plan. Whatever the operational plan is for one has to be identical to the other. And that's why it just makes common sense, the Corps telling me to just submit one. It won't take any longer, in fact, it'll probably be shorter time-wise, to submit one permit application for the project, and instead of two separate ones.
And who will make who, Ascension or Iberville will determine who provides this data?
We already decided that the data should come from the person that's been doing it for the last 10, 15 years or more, and that's George Hudson. He already has the data, and we both trust it, both Iberville and Ascension. And so that's the engineer that's probably going to use to supply the data for both projects.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Shake Snyder.
Bill, can we check on the lower Panama Conway improvements?
Actually, Jake and I have been talking about it. We're tasking a surveyor, and probably this week. I'll probably task a surveyor to start taking a topo of that whole channel, or at least where the channel should go, and also get with the pipeline company to determine the exact location of the pipeline and the depth of the pipelines. We're also going to get the inverts of any crossings under airline, especially under the road going back to the old pump station, Marvinboro pump station, because that's box cover. So we need to know the invert, exact location and size of that structure there, and the structure going under interstate. So our engineer, or the engineer that we task, is going to go and get all of that information and give it back to GSA, so they can start actually doing a preliminary design, which is needed, at least a 30% design that's needed to go forward with the permit process.
All right, are we trying to implement are we using what was recommended by the study that we did?
Yes.
And so we're trying to implement that?
Basically,
and I guess my question is,
right.
we have a study that we spent $500,000 on, it made recommendations, and the recommendations were to, so to speak, bring the lower area back to what it was at one time, to
There-
clear some of this thing.
Yes.
What else do we need to try to put in for permits to do that?
Well, again, we're moving forward with the essential items that's needed for the permit app, the initial permit app and JD. And that is, number one, the survey. And again, the survey to determine the pipelines and the depth of the pipelines, because that determines what we can dig and can't dig and how far we can go with it. And also the inverts of all the crossings. As far as the bridge is not an issue going under airline, but the structure going under the road going to the pump station and also under I-10, which is all box covers. But then all those inverts and sizes got to be identified. And that has to be given over for hydraulic analysis. You need that to determine, what kind of flow can go through, how big it can be. And that is needed also to show the limits of any kind of construction going through there for the permit. So do you determine exactly what kind of wetlands are, and that's in the
I'm sorry
progress
if I'm-
right now.
I'm sorry if I'm not following it, but I mean, it's not the box culverts that I'm talking about the lower Panama and lower Conway, where it crosses the airline highway and where it crosses the interstate.
Well, on those, on that end, and again, we're moving forward with a bypass or a secondary route around those two, that particular area. And that, we consider that the Conway, okay? The original Conway, because we consider where they meet at the interstate. The old Panama kept going one way.
So
Conway kept going this
And I
further down, under the railroad trestle and under the airline. Now, at those two locations, we were part of Chemspray, CSSI contract. When they get to those structures, and they're only about, I think they're at the intersection of Conway and Panama right now. When they get to the structures, they're going to determine exactly what's under there, and we're going to be there with them. And we're going to determine what needs to be done, how much area can be cleared under the trestle and under the bridge. The other part of the, I guess, the overall plan is, and this is something that probably BKI going to be involved with, is through hydraulic and hydrographic, hydrologic evaluation of the whole basin, determine how big that trestle opening needs to be and how big the opening under 61 needs to be, especially the trestle, how big it needs to be.
Yeah.
And we're going to get, we already got a commitment from the railroad that once we give them back our study on determining how big it needs to be, they're going to work with us on expanding it or actually doing some covers, additional structures underneath the railroad tracks to enable more water to go through.
And I perfectly understand that's long-term
That's long-term.
thing. But what was recommended on the study that we had was that we clear the existing channels and to clear the side of the airline highway and make all the existing channels clear.
And that's what Chemspray is doing right now.
No, I'm talking, not debris removal.
Well,
I'm talking about,
They're going to identify, once they get there, they're going to get all the debris out and identify what more we can do. We could be down there looking at it too. You can only do so much because there's really not much of a bank line down there. You got a minor bank line, but everything overtops. You have two control structures, and that's the trestle, and it's set. I mean, it's a certain size, and it can't get any
I
bigger.
understand that.
You can maybe deepen it a little bit, but deepening it is not going to allow too much more flow going through it. Capacity is the width of it. The same thing goes for the airline highway and the bridge going on the airline highway. That's set. We can clean muck out of it, which we're going to do, and in fact, Chemspray is going to help us getting the muck from underneath it and clearing the existing opening. That's all we can do until we're ready to, on a longer-term plan of expanding the capacity of those two areas, the two structures. And that's a much bigger job, and it has to come with the help of the railroad and the help of the state with US 61 if we find that that needs to be
I understand
enlarged.
that very much so. I'm just, my concern right now is to proceed with the whatever permit we need to get to clear the muck out of the existing channels.
Right.
To get them back the way they were built. That's number one right now. That's what we've been talking about. And then we can parallel through long-term thing, widening channels, doing things that we know need to be done in the future. But for right now, we spent $500,000 for a study that made recommendations to clear existing channels. And I just want to know how soon we're going to start putting in for permits for that. You know, that, because it's going to take a long time. It's going to take a year, or at least. What do we have to do?
Well, and again, let me, this is my thoughts on it. Now, I'm welcome anybody to come up here and tell me different. You can enlarge and you can dig out Panama. You can dig out Conway Bayou. You can take the trees down, slope it, and make it twice the size. It will hold more water during the event. The event falls, it will contain more of that event. If you get a rainfall at the capacity that we had, or the event, 500-year event that we had the other day, that bayou will fill up, and it will fill up for one reason and one reason only. It cannot get up underneath the railroad trestle, and it cannot get under Highway 61. But once it overtops, that bayou is insignificant. It's what's holding it back is the railroad trestle. Okay? If this last 500-year event, if we had double or triple the size of that structure on the railroad tracks and twice or three times the structure on the airline highway, we would not have had the problem we had. Period. If you clean out, make everything perfect, in fact, if you can line the channel with concrete, if you don't improve those two bottlenecks, it can't get out. I was witness it. I saw it when everything was out of the bank, and the one side of the railroad the railroad tracks was about 2 foot from the top. The other side was about 4 foot from the top. Mm-hmm. It was a dam. It couldn't go through. The only place it had to go through basically was at Conway and the railroad trestle. Further down, it had a couple other minor places. The other main place for it to get under is at Blind River, the boat landing. The railroad trestle and the bridge right there getting into Blind River. Until you open that up, it can't get through.
Well, I would like to follow what recommendation that we paid somebody for thing and move forward with something, you know, with permits to move forward. Just clear it like it was. I mean, and let's go from there. I mean, this is something.
It looks good now, and you've been down it yourself.
Yeah.
It's a nice bayou.
More than once.
It's clean. The water level is constant in it. They took a lot of debris out of it.
And we still have a bunch of sandbars, and we have places on the airline highway that has culverts that's across it. We have crossings on the airline highway and the railroad track that's all silted in. And every little bit helps, and we're looking at we have people that had 6 inches of water and they in their house that they would appreciate that water going down just 6 inches. If we could reduce that much just by clearing out the existing channels, that would be a big, big help for all the people in that basin.
And again, we can't associate the event we had
I understand
a few
that.
months ago with what needs to be done with the bayou. Again, once it overtops, the bayou is insignificant. The water spreads out and sheet flows everywhere. And the only thing that can solve that problem is remove the bottlenecks, what's keeping it from flowing to its natural recourse, which is down to Lake Maurepas and Lake Pontchartrain. And it's sheet flow through there. It's not made to stay within the channel with this kind of rainfall. It's made to overtop. That's why it's a marsh and a swamp. So.
That's it? All right. Yes, Mr. Cazzo.
Bill, I hate to go back, but I want to clarify one other thing about the Bluff Swamp. I think I heard you say that once this permit is issued jointly, we could divide this project into 2 projects, and we would handle one financially in construction?
Yes.
Okay, and that is, we can in fact do that?
The permit has nothing to do with the actual construction. It can be a separate project for its construction.
Okay.
The permit just expedites the whole process with the Corps on determining the conditions of the joint project for us. How does that joint project affect the whole basin, Spanish Lake and Bluff? They have to look at it as one basin and not 2 separate basins.
Well, you know my reluctance to have more than one entity trying to solve this problem. I would like to see it be us. Mr. Martinez?
Yes, ma'am, and
Sorry,
I
Mr. Chairman.
also join in your concerns, and what I'd like to do is possibly set up a meeting with Steve Wilson and yourself and me and maybe Randy, and go down to the Corps and discuss this project as a whole and see what we could do and not do, because the situation is I don't even know a whole lot about what Iberville is doing. I mean, I've not been told. I mean, are they dredging the canal? Are they doing, what are they doing?
At this point, according to their engineer, the only thing they're going to be doing is improving the Alligator Bayou at the locks. The basic thing is to enlarge the locks. At this point in time, with some automated type locks, so you don't have to have a man out there controlling and then opening and closing and stuff like this. According to their engineer, that's the only thing.
And that's the extent of that project.
So far, that's the only thing they're discussing.
And we would have full transparency as far as what they're proposing.
Yeah.
There has to be in the permit. It has to be completely defined, both of us, on exactly what we're doing.
Mr.
My-
Martinez, could
my
I
con-
request to be invited to that?
Oh,
meeting,
you certainly
please?
will be. My concern is, again, we've been talking about this for 5 or 6 years now, for sure. Even when your predecessor was in, we talked about Alligator Bayou, and we've been waiting on other entities since then. And my whole thing is that, you know, if it can be a separate project, I think that's the way we should go. I mean, I'm not sure that, I don't know how it won't delay anything if you're trying to work with 2 different entities, trying to come up with 2 different permits. So I'm going to just go down and I want to ask the Corps that question. So, and I'll bring Ms. Castle with me and we'll find out. And Randy,
Yeah.
you want to come?
Well, I can tell you, I can assure you that it wasn't, that only suggestion came from the Corps of Engineers, because it's basically one basin if you look at it as a whole. Just like water don't see parish lines, neither does the Corps. But it's every intention of ours to work our own project from start to finish. And that's, anybody that's working for us will work in that behalf also. And the people that had that project, that whole project, for a lot of years, they may not be involved in it right now. So,
One other follow-up, if I may, on a different issue. One of my constituents, Mr. Marshall, visited with you earlier tonight. I certainly seek your assurance that something will be, that your department will take a look at his issue and report back.
Yes, ma'am. And actually, I've talked to my assistant director, and he says he has already looked at the situation, but we get together tomorrow, and he can give me his report on what he found. So we'll have a resolution, at least our opinion on it, within a day.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
any other questions? Yes, Brian, Mr. Malone.
The ditch that runs by Pecan Grove under Prepare, I know you were trying to get some permitting or something to do something with that. What's the status on that?
It's on our list right here called the Bayou Francois Lateral Number 1, and it's in the permit process. The JD was issued, the application for the JD jurisdictional determination was given, and we're waiting right now for that letter to be returned back to us. Once we get the letter back, telling us exactly what type of permit's needed, and then they'll issue that, they'll put the application in for that specific kind of permit. And it shouldn't be a long process after that, because it's a fairly simple project, and it's not involving removing dirt. It's actually involving putting dirt back into the channel and putting it back like it was before.
I know I was out there the other day, and right under the overpass, it's higher right there, and so it's holding all that water back on the Pecan Grove west side.
Yeah.
It can't go anywhere. It's dry underneath the overpass, and it's just holding all that water sitting in that ditch right there.
That's right. And again, it's not a big project, but it's so visible. We got to get the Corps permit in place, so we won't have any kind of problems down the line with it.
And Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was about 5.5 years ago, we had a request to try to put a little bit more dam downstream to hold water in that ditch.
Actually, it was a weir there for
The
years,
weir,
and we removed
right at the end of that
weir.
road.
Yeah, and came up with this plan of a dual basin, tier type drainage system.
Anything else? Councilman Dempsey Lambert brought up something for you and Alan and the gang, and all administration. We appreciate you guys working overtime to try to get some of this local drainage stuff, ditch stuff done, and get that cleared out. Keep up the effort because the rain ain't stopped yet.
Well, President Martinez gave us the task last Friday and the last 2 Fridays to work overtime, give us an authorization to do whatever's necessary to try to catch up. Right now, on the grass, it's really been a problem this year because you can't really cut too much when it's wet, when it's raining. Can't spray at all when it's raining or wet. And it put us behind so far that right now we just maybe a third of the way inside our second rotation. And right now we should be finished up our second rotation. So we're just beginning second rotation of grass cutting. And it's a major issue, but we depended on the weather.
Thank you. Mr. President, you got anything else on that? Thanks, sir. Madam Secretary, please note that Councilman Turner's arrived during this discussion. We'll move on to agenda item number 7, change order number 2, BMJ Construction, LLC, Manchac Drive, drainage improvements, project number DPW-10-018. Mr. Rue.
This is another project depending on dry weather. We've been trying to get this work done for over 2 years now. It's real critical we have dry weather because it impacts 2 property owners and also most of the other rest of the subdivision because it has to go into the retainage, into the retention pond. The retention pond got to be pumped down. And that's what it is. Some large pipes is leading from the road to the detention between some houses. Actually, the driveways are going to have to be removed, and it's essential we have dry weather for at least 2 weeks or more to be able to get this work done. It's been delayed since 2012 because we have not had that happen at occasion to have it dry up for 2 weeks. So what we're asking for is to extend the contract until December 30th, 2014. We also, since in the last year, a couple other bad sump holes has evolved in that same area. So what we're asking is to increase the not to exceed amount of $12,000 additional to the contract. And what they intend on doing is when they do get in there to do the work, they can dig up these additional sump holes that came about in the last year, try to find out exactly what needs to be done to fix them and fix them. And that price to do that will not exceed $12,000. It might be half that, but it definitely won't exceed $12,000. That increases the contract to $54,815 and extends the contract to December 30th, 2014.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Lohr, second by Mr. Todd Lambert. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion passes. We'll move on to agenda item number 8, increase to notice to exceed compensation limit of the contract between East Ascension Gravity Drainage District Number 1 and Natural Resource Professionals, LLC, for wetland permitting consulting.
And number 8 and number 9 are exactly the same thing. It's, both of the Natural Resource Professionals and ELOS are 2 wetland consulting firms. Originally, we put a limit of $150,000 total, which is roughly $75,000 apiece for wetland permitting. We started getting, especially after the last rain event, we have so many more projects that needs permitting that we're asking to increase the limit to natural resource professionals not to exceed $200,000 for this year.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Shakespeare, right? Second by Ms. Cazzo. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion passes. Move on to agenda item number 10, authorization to contract with, number 9. Increased notice to proceed, notice to exceed compensation limit of the contract between East Ascension Gravity Drainage District Number 1 and ELOS LLC for wetland permitting consulting. Mr. Rue.
Yeah, again, that's supposed to be increased and not to exceed compensation, not to exceed $200,000 for ELOS for
Make
the
that motion.
remainder of this year.
We have a
So
motion by Mr. Lohr,
Second.
second by Ms. Cazzo. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion passes. We'll move to agenda item number 10, authorization to contract with Durable Piling Restoration LLC, AKA Paper Parker Composites, to repair bridges on Joe Severio Road. Mr. Rue.
Yeah, originally, we went through an RFP process, and we had two firms that really came to the top, and then one of them was SDR, and the other one was Parker Composites, who has changed their name to, what is it?
Durable Piling
Restoration. We did use the SDR on the bridges in Summerfield. What we'd like to do is, we have two bridges to do on Joe Severio Road, the main highway. We'd like to give Parker, the Durable Piling Restoration, a chance to see how they can perform. And again, we're just a comparison between the two.
We have a motion by Mr. Dempsey Lambert. Second by Mr. Todd Lambert. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion passes. We'll move on to agenda item number 11, authorization to update hazard mitigation plan per FEMA regulations for grant eligibility, eligibility. There you go. I knew I'd get it, Tommy,
You
sooner or
sound like
later.
me sometimes.
Man, go ahead, Mr. Rue.
Yeah,
Grant
this is
eligibility.
something grants department needs. They need to update the mitigation plan, hazard mitigation plan, and this is something that's periodic, has to be done. And
We have a
we ask
motion
for
by
the
Mr.
authorization.
Johnson, second by Mr. Todd Lambert. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion passes. We'll move on to agenda item number 12.
Motion adjourned,
We have a motion adjourned by Mr. Todd Lambert, second by Mr. Chris Lohr. Any opposition? We are adjourned.